Hey viewers and listeners, this is Blackleaf Media, and today we're going to be covering the protests that are happening in the wake of the Trump elected presidency, happening in most inner cities across the United States as this is being recorded. On Monday, these protests, if they continue, which I assume they will go into their sixth night, and these protests are organized, led, and financed by such men as George Soros, Al Sharpton, and are being led and organized as well as publicized by the likes of Michael Moore. If you'd like to learn more about George Soros, I'll link a video in the description that I've also posted on my channel without any commentary that George Soros doesn't want the world to see. A decently long 60 minutes interview with the man that R. the Donald had to drum up through academic databases because it was buried online. If you'd like to learn more about George Soros, you can click the link in the description. Reverend Al Sharpton and George Soros, as well as many other players in this larger event, are going to be covered with their own exposés in the coming months by Blackleaf Media. But for now, we're going to focus on Michael Moore.
They're worried about being taken out of the country. I mean, it's really, there's a lot of fear and a lot of panic amongst a lot of people right now.
I've been trying to explain that, and not to take anything away from Donald Trump's victory. But there's so much fear, and this isn't the normal fear of,
No. Right.
We're old enough to remember when Reagan was elected,
Right.
and people were like, oh my gosh, it was like, liberals were like, besides themselves. But it was in a
but that
different,
was it, beside themselves.
right, it was a different, this is completely different, and I don't really know how to qualify it.
What's scary is that you've got 77% of the country is either women, people of color, or young adults from 18 to 35. That's 77% of the country. So you have a minority, a man, a white man, over the age of 35, somebody who represents the minority of the country, is now in charge. And he has said throughout the whole campaign what he's going to do to them. He has screamed into microphones, I'm going to deport 2 million of you. We'll start with you, the criminals, the 2 million of you who are criminals in the first couple weeks. I think they're justifiably scared, and maybe if you're not of that group, you don't understand that. But I heard it out there in the street, and it was intense. And I was very proud of the fact that so many young people came out, because his presidency has to be opposed right now. His presidency started 2 days ago. That's the attitude people have to have. I mean,
Except his presidency starts on January 20th, 2017. I don't believe that breaking into businesses, screaming down the streets of the inner cities of the United States is going to prevent that inauguration months from now. Do I believe that they have the right to protest? Of course, but that does not mean that their protests provide any sort of bulwark towards democracy in the form that most protests and civil disobedience are supposed to provide a support for the democratic process. I believe these protests are doing quite the opposite. Of course, this is irrelevant. The main point of this is actually about the demographics he cited. He placed women, white women, black women, Latino women, young people, people of color, Latinos, in the same group, and pushed the white men over 35 into a corner. It's this demographic, this identity politics that these people play that pushes the 35-year-old white man to vote for Trump, or worse yet, just to vote against your ideology, Michael. You don't want to see these people vote for anything other than your ideology. It's this exact type of thinking about identity politics, possibly above all else, that may push progressives out of governance across the Western Hemisphere, not just in the United States, and not just for this election cycle. If you can lump anybody who doesn't vote for your ideology into an unsavory segment of identity politics or demographics, then you've already won the conversation at a base level. For you to lump in women of all colors, young people, people of color, and Latinos in the same voting block against white males over 35, then you're working off the assumption that these voting blocs are going to vote exactly how they're told, which we know now that they aren't going to vote exactly how they're told. They'll vote how they want to vote, and continuously segmenting society into males, people of color, white males, males over 35, makes enemies of these same demographics, especially if you take these demographics, push them into a corner, surround them with the other demographics, and then sharply poke them with a stick. What Micheal doesn't realize is that even as he explains why Trump won, he is currently doing the exact segmenting of the population into different groupings that forced a Democratic loss in the 2016 election.
I mean, remember, the Republicans were ready to start the impeachment hearings on day one against Hillary Clinton.
Right.
All right? The other side needs to be ready to roll right now to do whatever needs to be done to stop his appointments to the Supreme Court.
Is that right, though, to do that?
Absolutely. You have to do it. You have to do it only because, look, I appreciate what President Obama said today. We like to see that. We like to see what Hillary Clinton said.
Such a classy family.
Yes, that's right. And and it's like you watch that and you go, that's the country I want to live in. And I thought too that President Obama and Hillary yesterday were giving a tutorial to Donald Trump saying, if we had won, this is how we would have wanted you to behave, what you should have been saying, as opposed to threatening riots in the street if the election didn't go your way.
Yeah. When you look at him sitting today at the White House, there was, just me watching, I was like, I wonder if it's what's going through his head is, what have I gotten myself into? Because he looked a little scared. I
thought the same thing, but I think it was because, well, first of all, he realized this was going to be his new digs.
And this is real.
And this is a huge step down. I mean, he goes in there, he says, where's the penthouse? And they said, well, there's only 2 floors.
Yeah.
The penthouse is the 2nd floor. And probably on the way over, he might have noticed that, or one of his aides told him the majority of people in Washington, D.C. are African American. So in his mind, he's processing, he's going, oh, great, I get to live in a ghetto for 4 years. Good to live in a ghetto. No penthouse. Yeah. This old house.
This
really is my favorite part of the whole thing. Even Don Lemon's looking at Michael Moore a little bit like, really? You're going to use the ghetto when we're talking about the White House and D.C. just because there's a lot of African Americans in this city? See, Michael doesn't even realize, and I know I'm using that terminology a lot, but he doesn't realize he's doing exactly what he shouldn't be doing. He's talking about demographics. This millionaire documentary producer, this man who's lived in Hollywood and in New York and has traveled around the entire country on his leisure time, is deciding that the D.C. is ghetto, that the White House is ghetto. And I'm not even going to argue whether it is or isn't. The point being, when Trump uses terms like intercity or he uses language that some people view as derogatory towards the black community simply because it's not politically correct. He gets completely shat on. But Michael Moore can call the DC ghetto because it's filled with black people and no one bats an eyelash.
Work too.
I know this doesn't bring you any pleasure, but you predicted this would happen. And you were on my show just a couple of days before the election. Mm-hmm. You were on the show. Mm-hmm. Watch this.
Well, I live in Michigan, and so I know why she's going there tomorrow. She wasn't supposed to have needed to go there, but I think this has always been a lot closer than I think the Trump vote has probably been undercounted in these polls. Again, in Michigan, in our primary in March, Hillary was ahead of Bernie by 8 to 22 points on the morning of the primary. Mm-hmm. All the national polls, and 12 hours later, Bernie defeated her. Mm-hmm. So I don't think these polls, nobody should be sitting back, regardless who you're for. I mean, this is going to be close. Seems like it's going to be close.
I agree. The vote is still out in Michigan, but you pegged it. Not only did you peg that, you said Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. There was no blue wall. You were right on.
Well, I take no pleasure in that. I've been trying to warn people since the summer because too many of my fellow Hillary voters were doing the end zone dance on the 50-yard line.
I saw that. I saw that too.
Right?
But I also remember when he first came out and came down those escalators, and I said, you know what, this guy has a chance.
Yeah.
Especially my liberal friends, and even the conservatives, you're crazy.
Right.
I don't believe you. I've told this story before. I would go to parties and people, there was one guy who kicked me out of his house because I said, this guy, he had a Donald Trump, Christmas ornament and was making fun of Donald Trump. And he said, there's no way Hillary's going to trounce him. I said, you should never underestimate your opponent. That's your first mistake.
Right.
Because this guy, actually has a shot.
Clearly these liberals never saw Patton. And frankly, what you just said is absolutely true. And there were so many people that were just in their bubble because it felt good. Every time she won a debate, oh, thank God. Every time he said a crazy thing, oh, thank God.
Right.
And everybody's all gooey and warm and fuzzy inside, and it smells like cinnamon, and we're all happy. And it's like, I'm trying to scream, no, folks, take this seriously. You never watched The Celebrity Apprentice. I did, okay? I mean, this is a popular TV star. And he has manipulated people with so much BS, such a con job to my friends who lost their jobs in the factories in Michigan. And he goes there and he says, I'm going to put a tariff on those cars in Mexico. And he manipulates this, and people were buying it. And it's I don't know, it's very sad.
Let's talk a little more. Don't go anywhere. We'll continue on. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
I mean, they really, there's people who probably aren't watching this because they can't even afford basic cable. People are living from paycheck to paycheck. And I know a lot of people around where I live, they've just said to hell with the whole thing. And it's like you try to say, no, don't do this, because that's exactly what those in power want you to do. They want you to stay home.
Do you think it was a woman thing? Because I'm hearing a lot of Michelle Obama 2020.
Well, that's a good idea. Can we say you thought of it first?
No.
Oh, God, here we go. Tell me more about demographics, Michael.
A lot of people thought of it before I do. No. I'm sure there is misogyny out there, and people are.
Well, of course there's misogyny and there's sexism and he fueled it.
Yeah.
He encouraged it.
And women were excited to vote for the first woman.
And absolutely, but yes, I mean, look, Democrats have got to. When you say the word, I'm inspired by Hillary, but I get it that some people weren't. Democrats need to start running people who are inspiring, though. Why? I mean, the Republicans, they run Ronald Reagan, they run Schwarzenegger. Why aren't we running Tom Hanks or Oprah?
Yeah.
I'm serious. I mean, I don't say that as a joke. I mean, I'm really.
Well, specifically, the liberals tore Oprah apart for even saying something slightly nice about Trump. I'll put a link to that as well in the description.
Well, the interesting thing is,
why don't we run people who are beloved by the American people?
Here's what's interesting to me, is that there are many Republicans who don't and did not like Donald Trump, but they got on the train and they voted for him anyway. Right. There are Democrats who didn't like Hillary Clinton, but the interesting thing is that the progressives and liberals were busy fighting amongst themselves and still going, oh my gosh, Bernie didn't get on the ticket, and they were fighting something Hillary Clinton said 20 years ago and the crime bill and all that. Yeah. That may be well and good, but they did not get behind their candidate. And in a way, I think Bernie and Bernie supporters damaged Hillary Clinton more so than Donald Trump did.
Well, Bernie didn't. Bernie was out there campaigning for her every day. I don't believe that at all.
In the beginning, before. I think that.
Or you could just call them Bernie bros to say that they live in their parents' basements and never hear from them on election day. Or just call them misogynists and call them sexist like you called Trump. And by the way, why can't we run Michelle Obama because she's a charismatic candidate? Because she might win, because she's a good speaker, because she's intelligent. Why does it have to be because she's black, or because she's a woman, or because she's the first lady?
Damage was done.
Well,
especially with millennials and with African Americans.
Wouldn't you agree that if Bernie had been the candidate on the ballot, he would have been the president-elect?
See, this is extremely key and extremely important. Of course Bernie would have won, but Bernie would have won because he wouldn't have divided the electorate. He would have focused on the issues. And liberals can't even recognize that as they talk shit about middle-aged, overaged white males, they want to elect an overaged white male.
That's my question to you.
Well, absolutely. Of course I believe that. So I believe that because if, as you all are saying here, that this was an election about change, well, the difference between Bernie and Hillary was that one was the change candidate and one was part of the system. And if she was perceived as part of the system, I don't think she would have behaved that way. I think she would have done incredible, incredible things. Yeah. But people watching this have got to go to bed tonight remembering again, the majority of our fellow Americans wanted her, not him. She is winning the popular vote. That's who the American people agree with, Hillary Clinton. All right, because of an archaic system that we have, he is now going to be the president-elect.
I'm going to take a little bit more time. I know we're late, but can you put this up, this graphic up from question 4 that I have here? You also say the Democratic Party failed us. You wrote an immediate 5-point plan to what to do now.
Yes.
You say that this is your Michael Moore morning after to-do list.
Yeah.
Take over the Democratic Party. Fire the pundits and the pollsters. Obstruct Republicans in Congress. Stop saying you're shocked. Repeat, Clinton won the popular vote.
Right. That's right. And we do. The progressive wing has to take over the party. The pundits are already fired. The table is empty here. Thank you. All right. So all the people who got it wrong are now gone, and we have to stop listening to them. But liberals and progressive people have got to understand they are the majority. We are the majority of this country. The American people agree with us on every single issue, whether it's equal pay for women, climate change, death penalty, pro-choice, go down the whole list now. The majority of Americans are progressive and liberal, even if they don't call themselves that.
Right.
So if it's already that way, why do we have a Congress and a president now who are not representative of the majority of our fellow Americans? This is totally wrong. Yeah. I corrected my last word there.
I'm glad you did.
Out of respect for you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Such a pleasure. All right. Up next, anti-Trump protesters take to the streets again tonight as the president-elect meets in Washington with President Obama and Republican leaders of Congress.
This is perhaps the most infuriating part, that he understands exactly what Clinton did wrong. He identifies that she's part of the system. He even makes the older white male the change candidate in his hypothetical analysis, but he doesn't realize that everything he said prior to that is contrary to what he just said. Now let's watch Michael attempt to single-handedly delegitimize American democracy on national television.
No, I am.
Didn't Obama say that? I won.
Yeah, but I'm not with him on that. I understand why he and Hillary have to take that position. They should. That's their job.
Their duty is different from ours.
Their duty is different from our duty. We are going to resist. We are going to oppose. These demonstrations you're seeing in the streets, when it's in places last night like Milwaukee and Nashville, not exactly Berkeley and Ann Arbor, all right? This is going to continue tonight and the next night and the next night. And all he has to do is start nominating Rudy Giuliani as Attorney General and things like that, or his Supreme Court. This is going to be a massive resistance. There's already, women are calling for a 1 million woman march on the inauguration day. And there's going to be the largest demonstration ever on Inauguration Day. And there are going to be demonstrations on that, but we're also going to organize. You've seen nothing like everything that they were going to do to Hillary, the obstruction that they did to Obama for 8 years, and putting her on trial for impeachment. Let me just say, I was just saying to Lupica there in the room that here's what's going to happen. This is why we're not going to have to suffer through 4 years of Donald J. Trump, because he has no ideology except the ideology of Donald J. Trump. And when you have a narcissist like that, who's so narcissistic where it's all about him, he will, maybe unintentionally, break laws. He will break laws because he's only thinking about what's best for him.
But aren't you now wishing ill on him instead of...
I don't have to wish ill. He is ill.
I think
he is ill. He is racist. He is a misogynist. He is an authoritarian. Bertram Gross, a philosopher who's no longer with us, wrote a book in 1980 called Friendly Fascism. And what he said is that the fascism of the 21st century would not be concentration camps and cattle cars and all of that. It would come with a smiley face, maybe even a TV show. And he would be popular, and he would say all the right things, and people will willingly bring him in and give up their rights even to him.
Do you think the people's message is being heard?
Oh, you haven't even begun to see how it's being heard. This demonstration, how many are they predicting or how many are they saying are here right now?
13,000.
Yeah.
They expect up to 16.
Yeah, well over 10,000 for sure. Probably upwards of 20,000. Listen to that.
I have a question for you, though.
Listen to that.
If they impeach Trump, then they'll get
So, this is going to be one of the smallest demonstrations.
You think they're going to get bigger?
Oh, are you kidding? They're only going to get bigger. They're only going to get bigger. The majority of the people didn't vote for him. The majority of the people voted for Hillary Clinton. So how do you think the majority of Americans feel right now?
Mr. Moore, what about the critics who say, look, we know that he's going to be in office for the next 4 years and there's nothing we can do about
Well, our job is to make sure he doesn't take office, and we're going to do that legally and non-violently.
How do you go about doing that?
How do you go about doing it?
How can you stop him from taking office?
We will put as many of our bodies on the line as possible to block him. If it takes right up to Inauguration Day, there'll be millions of people in the street in D.C. on Inauguration Day. Up until then, we are going to get our elected representatives to do what they need to do. We're going to talk to the electors of the Electoral College. We have a lot of states that have already voted to accept the popular vote, and the electors are required to go with the popular vote. So we're going to work on that. We're going to do a lot of things.
This has been Blackleaf Media. Thanks for listening and watching, guys. If you could leave a like and subscribe if you like the content, and there'll be more in the future. Extremely new, so I could really use the help and the support. Thanks, guys.